This week, the war does flare up with a battle taking place of 5,000 participants. On the 8th, Tennessee votes to confirm its secession with 108,000 votes to 47,000. It's clear the majority supports secession in the state, though with such a strong minority opposing it, along with being situated next to the valuable Mississippi River, only time will tell if this motion is actually implemented. Also on the 8th, the Virginia militia is incorporated into the Confederate States military. This is important because the Confederacy had very little soldiers in Virginia before this action. And Virginia is where the capital of the Confederacy is. Though in reality this is a formality, with Virginia having sent soldiers to take places the Confederacy seems valuable already. On the 11th, the Second Wheeling Convention is convened. A quick reminder, this convention is made up of pro-Union Virginians, many from northwest parts of Virginia. 3 actions take place on the 11th. A 5-member committee on organization is formed. All members are appointed before the end of the day. Also, a 5-member committee on rules is created. All members are appointed on the 11th also. Finally, a 5-member committee on credentials is made, and you guessed it, all members are picked before nightfall. We will see the convention reconvene on the 14th next week. The main action of this week is the battle at Bethel Church, also known as the Battle of Big Bethel. The Union forces are led by a Major General Butler. The infamous Benjamin Butler is assisted by his aide-de-camp, Major Winthrop. Under his command is approximately 4,400 men, who are led in person by Brigadier General Pierce. This is made up of men from the 1st to the 5th New York, along with the 7th New York, 1st Vermont, and 4th Massachusetts, guarded by the 2nd U.S. Artillery. Interestingly, all cavalry for the Union is integrated within these selections. The Confederates, on the other hand, are led by Colonel Mugrider, who is given only 1,400 men to defend this area, who are led by Hill's brigade, not the famous A.P. Hill, but Daniel Hill. There is no relation. His men come from the Waist Rifles, Richmond Howitzers, 1st North Carolina, 3rd Virginia, Montague's Battalion, Mecklenburg Dragoons, and the Peninsula Cavalry. For those of you who don't know, the Peninsula Cavalry is led by some gay names. John Bell Hood, I think. The Union's plan is to send the 5th New York, also known as Duryea Zouaves, named after Brumdre, the creator and leader of the 5th New York for now. In between Little Bethel and Big Bethel, he would cut off the road to all Confederates. Then, aided by the 3rd New York, he would attack Little Bethel. The 3rd New York is supposed to follow behind the 5th. Also, at this time, the skirmishers from the 1st Vermont and 4th Massachusetts are to be sent around and attack from the other side. They were to be followed by the 7th New York, who are primarily made up of German immigrants. The plan is that the 7th New York, along with the rest of the 1st Vermont and 4th Massachusetts, would meet up with the 3rd, creating a reserve for this very complicated plan. But we knew that this plan was complicated, also that his inexperienced men would probably be confused, so he said it was safe for it to stop friendly fire. I'm confused, and I have the benefit of hindsight. So the 5th New York is marching down. Despite some delays, is approaching the enemy without being spotted. Then, they are stopped by the sound of volley fire. They look behind them and see smoke, as the 3rd New York has been fired upon. This makes no sense. The Confederates have no idea what is happening, and even if they did, there are no place to attack the 5th New York, much less the 3rd, which is behind them. This isn't any sort of Confederate army or militia, but the 7th New York. It seems that the 7th New York is not told the safe word. In addition, the 3rd New York are wearing gray uniforms, and also had integrated cavalry. Now you know why I brought that up. This causes Brigadier General Pierce, the leader on the ground, to pause, tactically retreat, and reorganize. Having lost cohesion, the element of surprise, and 21 wounded, 2 mortally, some of the colonels advise him to call the attack off, but Pierce is unwilling to disobey Butler's plan. Butler's aide-de-camp, Winthrop, is also arguing for the continuing attack. The 3rd New York had lost many men to fear, so, running back to their starting positions, they told the leader of the 1st New York that the 3rd New York is eradicated. Stoically, the 1st marches to the battlefield. Pierce calls on the 2nd New York for additional help. 2 new units, not in the initial plan, are marching to the battlefield. Also, the 5th New York and the detachments from Massachusetts and Vermont went back to the site where the supposed battle between the 7th and the 3rd is taking place. The 50-odd Confederates in Little Bethel Church, having heard the mass fire from one enemy regiment into another, decide to pack up and leave their outposts. Clearly, they don't want to deal with the at least 2,800 army led by madmen attacking their small church. Then the church is burned down. I've heard 2 sources saying it was the Confederates, though more sources saying it was the 5th New York. More proof Butler is terrible at PR. Magruder, a Confederate leader, believes that he can and should retake Little Bethel. He starts leading his men to reclaim the now charred remains of the church, but, upon looking down, soon sees the Union advancing towards him and hastily fall back to his fortifications. The Union sends the 5th New York, along with some skirmishers, to do reconnaissance of their enemy's positions. They come back and say they have 30 pieces of artillery, 6 times what the Confederates actually have. And they have anywhere from 3,000 to 5,000, as opposed to the 1,400 men that the Confederates actually have. Part of the scouting team is a Captain Kilpatrick, who will be important later on. Kilpatrick then starts shooting at Confederate pickets, further alerting the Confederacy if they hadn't done so enough. Undaunted, the Union resolves to attack, and the battle commences by a lucky shot from a Confederate howitzer that kills a Union soldier. The 5th New York then bravely charges the left flank of the 1st Confederate line, but is forced back after a hail of musket fire, not even getting to use the bayonets they had equipped. The Union, under Lieutenant Grebles, sets up 3 pieces of artillery in the middle. These pieces, despite being fired quite a bit, will do very little in the battle. For the upcoming fight, the left of the Union will be held by the 1st and 3rd New York, while the rest of the Union's infantry will be on the right. There will be many unsupported attacks for the next 3 hours as the Union unsuccessfully tries to defeat Confederate positions. Union skirmishers will be sent out to gather further information on their opponents, but are repulsed by musket fire, quickly ending their investigations. Kilpatrick units decides to take action, and with another company of the 5th New York, run across the open field and take cover behind a house, and shed, and whatever trees they could really find. After waiting a bit, and a cannonball coming through the house and killing another Union soldier, these 2 companies are aided by the 3rd New York. They advance on enemy positions but are forced to drop to the ground, 500 feet from the enemy's position. On the ground, the leader of the 3rd starts to get paranoid and believes he's about to be flanked, and stands up and pulls back. Simultaneously, the Confederate forward leader thinks he's in major peril and falls back. So the 2 companies of the 5th advance and take this advantageous position, but by now the 3rd New York has left. The Confederates, realizing what has happened, quickly counterattack and retake their positions. And what was scaring the New York's 3rd's leader so much? Why, a group of his own men who had become detached from the main force. I am not kidding. Kilpatrick, who was away from his unit but still in the right during this time, works with the rest of the 5th New York and tries to take the right. His movements come under heavy fire when Lieutenant Colonel Warren raises the men's spirits and advances on a fort. This fort is defended by only a few Confederate infantry who run away at the sight of the massacres of Union soldiers. Once the Confederates realize that they're facing deserting men, move part of their howitzers, who then stop the Union advance. The Union falls back to some forest and engages in a duel with the artillery using grape shot firing into the forest, where the Union lose another man and wound Kilpatrick in the leg. After a while, they pull back and have to carry the wounded Kilpatrick with them, lest he fall into enemy's hands. The final main action of the battle is a charge. Major Winthrop, who is, in addition to being the aide-de-camp, is also an officer who takes part in the 5th New York, and parts of the 1st Vermont, and parts of the 4th Massachusetts for a final advance. They disguise themselves as Confederates and cross the ford peacefully. They then yell and start charging, giving away their disguise. 2 companies of the North Carolina Regiment turn to face them and fire. The Union men start to fall back. Then Winthrop hops over Watts and he says, "Come on, boys, one charge and the day's ours." After these inspiring words, a volley is heard and Winthrop falls to the ground. Union skirmishers continue to fire from their positions in their earlier mentioned house and shed. The Confederate men send men to set fire to the house which they are currently being shot from. The Union answers this with finally accurate gunfire and kill a Private Wyatt, the first official Confederate death of the war. The battle has ended by this point, but the Union artillery continues to operate despite lack of men. Preble is trying to keep up his inaccurate fire. This is against orders by Pierce to retire and end this battle. Preble is killed by a cannonball to the head. Once receiving news of this, some Union men return to bring back Preble's body, knowing him from West Point. Preble is actually the first officer from West Point to die. The Union finally returns back to their starting positions at 5 p.m. 13 hours since the 5th New York set out to take the very well-we defended Little Bethel Church. In the end, 18 soldiers die and 53 wounded, with around 5 deserters, as compared to the 1 Confederate death and 9 casualties. That's where the week ends. A convention that could lead to a rebellion within a rebellion, a long but ultimately unsuccessful advance into the Virginia Peninsula. Right now, the Union seems to be failing to take much ground and losing more men doing it. Maybe the Confederates can take advantage of this, but just now, Virginia militia has been incorporated into the CSA's military. The CSA seems to be very unorganized and not able to do anything about their recent advantages. We might soon see what happens when bad orders are mixed with bad organization carried out by untrained 18-year-old boys. See you next week.